So, over the years, as I've been knitting, I've realized that just because a pattern is popular, that doesn't mean that it deserves a place in my wardrobe. As I've become more intentional with what I knit, I've started saying no to some very popular patterns. Not because they're bad patterns, but because they don't fit my style, my lifestyle, or just how I get dressed every day. So today I'm going to share 5 popular patterns that I won't be knitting and explain my thought process as to why they have not earned a place in my wardrobe. If you're trying to build a more wearable and cohesive handmade wardrobe filled with pieces you actually wear and love for years, I think this video will help you think differently about pattern selection. So when I first started knitting garments, I definitely fell victim to cast-on blindness. I knit everything impulsively without a second thought as to whether it would add value to my closet or even just go with the pieces that I already owned. And don't get me wrong, an impulse cast on every once in a while, I'm all for. I think it keeps the excitement of the craft alive, but when every piece is an impulse cast on, I found that it left me with a closet of sweaters that I just didn't wear. The right piece should strike a balance between getting you closer to your dream style while also drawing on the reasons that your most worn pieces actually get worn. Knitting is quintessential slow fashion, so I want every piece to really earn its place in my wardrobe through thoughtfulness, intention, and curation. So let's get into the first popular knitting pattern that I won't be knitting. So the first popular pattern that I will not be knitting is the Rosie Yoke sweater by Knit. This is a round yoke colorwork sweater with an oversized fit and beautiful roses at the yoke. I have to admit, I think this looks absolutely beautiful, and I can totally understand why it's very popular. I think it's one of her newer patterns, and it's part of her Rosie collection, which includes a drop shoulder version, some mittens, and I think a junior version as well. But I've learned that round yokes don't work for me. With my body shape, a round yoke just doesn't drape how I want it to, and I know that if I were to knit this sweater, even though the samples look very cool and chic and effortless, when I put on a round yoke sweater, I feel frumpy. I don't feel chic, I don't feel effortless, it feels difficult to style and not very flattering. So although I think this is a very beautiful piece, for me, I won't be knitting it. The next popular pattern that I will not be knitting is the Sophie Scarf by Petite Knit. Now, this one has been popular for a couple years already, and understandably so. It's a great stash busting project, or if you have a luxury yarn, but you only have one skein or a small quantity and don't know what to make with it, Sophie Scarf is what a lot of people have chosen. However, for me, I won't be knitting it, and here's why. This is one of those pieces that I like to window shop. In other words, I like to see how other people wear it, how they style it, and what they come up with their yarn combinations and color choices. But I know that a mini scarf is not going to seamlessly fit into my wardrobe. And in fact, given the pieces that I already wear a lot in my day-to-day life, the Sophie scarf doesn't really go with them. And so if I were to knit a Sophie scarf, it would actually mean that I'd have to go out and buy more clothes to make the outfits that I like. And so for me, based on my current wardrobe, I know that knitting a Sophie scarf would mean adding more effort to my closet and decision fatigue when getting dressed in the morning. Off the top of my head, I can't think of at least 3 outfits that I would wear with it. So for me, that means it's a no. The third popular pattern that I will not be knitting is an ultra popular one that I'm sure every single one of you has either heard of or maybe knit yourself, and that is the Ranunculus. The Ranunculus has 33,000 projects on Ravelry at the time that I'm filming this, and I can understand why it's so popular. It is extremely versatile, You can adapt the neckline, the sleeves, the body, and you can knit it with any yarn, any gauge. However, for me, just because it has all of that versatility, that doesn't translate to versatility in my wardrobe. This is another piece that I think is pretty to look at, but wouldn't work for me personally. Sometimes when choosing a pattern, I like to ask myself this question. If I could only have one lace yoke sweater in my closet, would I choose this one? And for me, the answer is no. And here's why. Obviously, as we touched on before, it has a round yoke construction, which I already know is not my most flattering construction option. But also, I am paying attention to the neckline. Now, this pattern has two options for a neckline. It has a wider neckline and a more narrow neckline. However, I've noticed from looking at the sample photos as well as the other Ravelry projects that even with the more narrow option, you still get a very much boat neck silhouette. And that is not a neckline that I enjoy wearing. I've decluttered that neckline from my closet with store-bought pieces, and so for me, it just doesn't make sense to go and knit something with that same neckline. I've learned from my fashion mistakes in the past that when I settle for a piece that is almost perfect, I end up just buying a new, better version somewhere down the road and wasting my money. So when I'm knitting, I want to make sure that I'm not settling, but rather the piece is checking all of the boxes that I'm trying to check so that it actually serves the purpose intended in my wardrobe. All right, the fourth pattern that I will not be knitting, even though it's very popular, is the Winter's Pullover by Ozetta. This is a very nice looking oversized drop shoulder turtleneck sweater, and it has a very store-bought look. It kind of pulls on that cool girl style that brands like Baba, which has been very popular over the last year, really nail. And it seems like the perfect staple winter wardrobe piece. However, last year I knit sweater number 25 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which is a very similar pattern. It's a drop shoulder, it's oversized, and it's got a chunky turtleneck. And I love the process of knitting it, but after wearing it for a couple months, I realized that the oversized drop shoulder fit is just not as flattering as I was hoping on my body type. When I wore that specific type of fit, I didn't get that cool girl chic vibe I was going for. I kind of felt sloppy and frumpy. And I noticed that it didn't drape on me how I wanted. I got tenting in the body, and the oversized cuffs really got in the way and weren't very practical for my day-to-day life. So learning my lesson from that knit, I am going to pass on the Winter's Pullover by Ozetta. I've learned that just because I like the vibe that the sample photos give off, that doesn't always translate one-to-one when actually wearing the piece myself. Copying a vibe is more than just copying a specific garment or a specific outfit one-to-one. Instead, I want to adapt that aesthetic or vibe to my specific body type and my style, using the lessons I've learned about fit and silhouette over the years. The fifth and final pattern that is ultra popular right now that I will not be knitting is the Mew top. This tank top is really beautiful and it has a very unique modern silhouette, and so I can definitely see why it's very popular. It seems like it's the perfect elevated basic and would be very flattering with the waist shaping going on with the ribbing. However, I will not be knitting this piece because I have learned from my wardrobe declutters that if a piece requires specific undergarments to make it look good, it's not getting worn in my closet. And with this having an off-the-shoulder look, I know that I would need to wear a strapless bra with this. I'll have to pull it up throughout the day, I won't be very comfortable, and that's enough to deter me from ever wearing this garment. Sometimes a piece looks like the most perfect elevated basic, but in reality, it actually adds more effort when getting dressed. And I don't want to knit a piece that adds more obstacles when getting dressed in the morning, even if it's super cute. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would encourage you all to go into your own closets, look at your knitted and non-knitted pieces, and take note of what works and what doesn't. Are there pieces that you wear often? Why is that? Are there pieces that you just never wear? Why is that? And maybe make yourself your own framework for decision making when choosing patterns. We spend so much time knitting handmade garments. I think it's only fitting that we're just as intentional when choosing patterns to curate a closet that fits both our practical needs as well as our aspirational style. I hope this video was insightful and helpful for you. Let me know in the comments if there are any popular patterns that you won't be knitting and why. I'd be very curious to know. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.